everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. My name is Kelton Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. This week is part 2, aka the last part of our Getting into Higher Power series. Last week we talked about playing higher power casual Commander, and this is what we're going to be talking about specifically getting into cEDH.
Yes, I actually thought about this today. I don't think in the last video we talked about what the C in cEDH actually stands for, if there's anybody who's hearing this for the first time. So Commander, the original name for Commander was Elder Dragon Highlander. That's why it's called EDH. So cEDH is just competitive EDH, which is a different flavor of Commander than casual.
Yeah, I guess technically they're both cEDH, right? One's casual EDH and one's
that's so funny.
EDH.
Yeah, I guess that's super confusing.
No, but that's how it's denoted, right? Is Commander and then cEDH, which is the competitive version of Commander.
Yep.
So we wanted to recap a little bit from last week, though, because we covered the difference between cEDH and high power casual. And although we skipped what the C in cEDH means, now that we know it's competitive, I think it's worthwhile for us to cover that one more time, just in brief. And if you'd like a longer explanation, you can join us in our last episode.
Yeah, go back and watch it. We do dive in deeper, and we have a really great conversation around casual. But just to recap really quickly, cEDH is a little different. Your goal is really to win at all costs. You're playing the most efficient commanders. You're playing the most efficient cards in your 99, and it's kind of just all out, do whatever you can to win. Like that is your primary goal in playing cEDH. It's not focused on themes or synergies or anything like that. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, you were probably trying to jump in and I was talking straight over you.
No, it's okay. I keep doing that. I've had a little bit of a cough recently, so I'm trying not to blow out this microphone. The goal of any commander deck, a goal of any commander deck should be winning the game, right? But a cEDH deck, its only goal is to win the game. It doesn't have a goal of playing a specific combo. It doesn't have a goal of playing a specific cool card. It is just trying to win the game.
It plays the most efficient combos and the most efficient cards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every card in the 99 should contribute towards the purpose of winning the game. Whereas, in high power casual, you're optimizing your deck around a given theme, and you're building around your commander. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. So, yeah, you're often building really heavily around that commander. You pick a commander you like, or you pick a theme you like, and then everything in the deck. You still might be playing powerful cards and effects. There's different levels of casual commander. There's lower power casual commander. There's higher power casual commander, and everything in between. But even at the higher powers in casual, there's still like a little bit of a theme. So now that we know a little bit about what the difference is, we can dive more into cEDH.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to add to that, just really quickly, if that's all right, is that I do feel like it is very binary. I know the lines can get a little blurred between really high power casual and cEDH, and that's probably true. Some things are like fringe cEDH, but when you talk about fringe cEDH, we're usually talking about specific commanders and the cEDH strategy of that commander being a fringe cEDH deck. Not my Garth One-Eye deck being fringe cEDH. It is high power casual.
Gotcha. It's more on whether or like where it's located in the meta, if it's at the top of the meta or if it's a little bit lower down in the meta, but it's still built as a cEDH deck. It's not just a high power casual deck that's playing in a cEDH game.
Yep, exactly. So it is honestly very, very binary as far as like cEDH versus high power casual, although it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, a lot of newer players, as you're getting into deck building, if you are starting to play at different power levels, you hear a lot of times people say, "Oh, that's a cEDH card. That's a cEDH deck." And really, they're just saying it's a higher power card or a higher power deck. Most likely, it's not a cEDH deck because it is so meta dependent on what a cEDH deck is trying to do.
Yeah, oftentimes people that are saying those sort of things haven't really played cEDH. We did that before we had played any cEDH.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's very tempting to just call everything high power cEDH, and that's just not the truth.
So, as we move on to talking about actually getting into playing cEDH, the first caveat I want to give here is that you should take this with a not monumental, but relatively large grain of salt, as neither of us are particularly into cEDH.
Yeah.
That being said, I am on a journey of getting into cEDH.
Yeah, and I've really only played a couple of games, but Spencer, you've played quite a few games at this point. I think you consider yourself still very early in that journey, but you have been through those steps of like starting to play and trying to figure it out. So I'm excited for you to share that journey with us.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to be educational to some degree.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention that we mentioned again last episode, so please go check it out. We're linking it in the description. Is that getting into cEDH is actually, I would say, easier than getting into higher power. That because often with higher power you have to play in a playgroup, but a lot of cEDH play actually happens online. Obviously, you can play in your playgroup, but there are like Discord channels. We'll get into the actual different resources to be able to play online, but all of that happens online. So it is a really easy format to break into, and because it's so proxy friendly, you don't necessarily have to own any of these expensive cards, buy any of the expensive staples. Oh my goodness, this cough is going to kill me. Buy any expensive staples. You can just print yourself a deck, sleeve it up, and start playing.
Yeah. I think that you have been really good and proactive about getting our playgroups to join you in cEDH, and I think we're all interested, and we've all played some games with you, and you were really nice to proxy us all cEDH decks so that we can jump in pretty easily. But I'd say at this point, most of your cEDH play has been online, and that's really cool that just kind of anyone can jump in. And that's something that we talked a little bit about in the last episode. Is one of the differences between cEDH and casual is that cEDH, for the most part, gets rid of the rule zero conversation, because the rule zero conversation is discussing, what kind of gameplay experience are we looking to have? What power level of decks are we playing? Are there any strategies that we want to exclude from this playgroup? None of that takes place in cEDH because everyone is playing the most powerful cards, the most powerful effects, and the rule zero is kind of already had in the sense that everyone is trying to win and win early and efficiently. And so you can just jump into a pod online with strangers and play cEDH because you're not worried about what kind of a play experience you're going to have. For the most part, you know exactly what play experience you're going to have. Yeah,
exactly. It really facilitates being able to play online because there is no rule zero. You just say, hey, we're all playing cEDH, bring your deck.
That's cool.
Kelson mentioned in brief that part of my journey into cEDH was that I wanted to play with my playgroup because they're my favorite people to play with. And so I did proxy my entire playgroup decks. It was like, I don't know, like $250 for a deck and then like $10 to $15 for sleeves or whatever.
Sure. When you say $250, you mean $2.50.
$2.50, yes. $2.50 full stop, not $250.
Yeah.
I'm not Scrooge McDuck over here. So that is a solution if you want to play with your playgroup and want them to be able to play higher power with you. But most of these steps we're going to be talking about is a way to do it all by yourself, be able to get into cEDH, regardless of whether your playgroup is interested or you have the funds to be able to, which again, still on the cheap, print a deck for your friends.
Sure. Yep.
So this leads us to a resource you should check out. A video from Play to Win, one of the more popular cEDH podcasts and cEDH gameplay channels. We'll link them in the description as well. They do an episode on getting to cEDH, and I want to, in brief, talk about the 8 steps. They say 7.5 steps, but that's because they start on step 1/2 and move up by whole steps the entire time. So that's
so funny.
1/2, 1.5, all the way up to 7.5, but it's 8 steps.
Yeah, this is great. This is a really great channel. If you are interested in dedicated cEDH content, you should go check them out. It's awesome. I've watched a ton of their videos and a ton of their content. It's really entertaining, and it really gives you a taste of what cEDH is like, and you can watch some of their gameplay videos. So, and this episode in particular is quite good. You sent it to me as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then go comment on their videos that they should have us on to play with them.
Yeah, we'd love that. Yeah, let them know.
Yeah. But like we said, it's a different mindset from casual Commander. It develops its own metagame, and so there's a lot to learn. But these are the 8 steps that they give. The first one being to read cEDH.guide. That is a website. Read their philosophy document. This is a document that talks about the philosophy of cEDH. The TLDR there is that it is just Commander turned up to 11, and you're playing to win and skipping the rule zero conversation.
Yeah, it's cool. I hadn't ever seen this website before I hopped over and was checking it out, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. It's a good gateway for potential cEDH players.
Yeah, I really, really like it. One of the things they do there too is that there's a little find my deck button, and you can choose like the style of decks you like to play. It asks you a couple questions, and then it recommends a deck for you to maybe pick up.
Oh, that's really cool.
I don't know that those are ones that I would recommend you start playing with. I think it is probably has good recommendations. We're gonna get to this later. There's a cEDH Discord, pardon me, that does recommend good decks for beginners and strategies to avoid, and we can talk about that in a little bit because later in this episode we're going to be talking about decks to pick up, some commanders you should play if you're going to be playing cEDH. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Number 2 is to understand how priority works.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I feel like in casual Commander, we get pretty loose with priority and the stack, and we shortcut a lot of things because it's a casual game. We're just trying to, keep the pace moving pretty well. But this is really important in cEDH. It matters when and how you're doing things and taking game actions.
Yeah, incredibly so. Most people's decks, not all of them are playing blue, but most people's decks have some sort of interaction or stack interaction or instant speed interaction with the board. And as a result, those stack interactions and priority matter very heavily because some of the strategy is to pass priority when you are not last in priority order, maybe force people to use their interaction.
So that you can save yours for
my
later.
goodness,
and you can get the interaction out of their hands.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So understanding priority, respecting priority order, and not just saying in response when you're last in priority order after somebody casts a spell.
Yeah. Which we jump to all the time in casual Commander. It's just like, I'm going to do something about that. And you're not like, are you doing anything? Are you doing anything? Are you doing anything?
100%. This has pushed me to do that more in casual, to be like response.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that I'm not going to waste my interaction before someone else does.
Yeah. Yeah. You always want someone else to play their cards so you don't have to play yours.
All right. Number 3 is to watch gameplay. And if we were to point you somewhere, Play to Win is a great place to watch some cEDH gameplay.
Yep.
They use that as a little plug for their show as well. But watching gameplay, first of all, pardon me one more time. I'm sorry, everybody. This is going to be all episode. I really apologize. Part of watching gameplay is you get more familiar with the decks that are being played in the meta, or even some off-meta decks, but the cards that are being played in cEDH, because to some degree, the cards are pretty ubiquitous within colors. There are some cards that are specific to a specific deck or strategy, but I would say like 70 to 80% of the cards are staples within the cEDH metagame that are going to be played.
So you're going to be able to start recognizing a lot of those cards and seeing how they interact and seeing how you're supposed to play them.
Yes, and understanding the play lines from people who have played for a lot longer and are likely much better than you are as well.
Yeah. Yep. I'll introduce the
Please,
next one.
go ahead, do the next one.
You're doing
I'm
doing
so
most of the
sorry.
talking
I
here
am
and
just
discussing
packing up
here.
along over here.
So number 4 on their list was look at deck lists. And this is a website that I have spent a lot of time on myself, even though my cEDH experience is limited. And that's the cEDH deck list database. It's kind of a long URL. You can just Google cEDH deck list database, and it usually comes up first there. But someone has compiled all of the current meta cEDH decks and have links to the discords for those decks, for those commanders, and the links to the decks on Moxfield. So you can go ahead and look at the deck list, read the primers to learn how those decks are supposed to play. And it's a really cool resource. I have used it even in just building my casual decks. Occasionally I want to say, like, is this a commander that's being played in cEDH? What are the things that they're doing in cEDH that are different than what's being done in casual commander? Is there anything I want to learn from that, or anything I want to know about how this commander might play at a different level, whether that's to include some of those things or to avoid some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's mostly been to include when I'm playing like higher power decks.
Yeah.
And just sometimes because I'm interested. But you do get some interesting perspective on, this is like a combo that I never thought of with this commander specifically, or just in these colors.
Yeah.
That you may want to include. And I do think it's really cool. It's a really good resource. One of my favorite things about it is they have a list of the decks that like, exist in the current metagame, both like the top tier and like the low tier decks, and then they have a list of outdated decks that are no longer seeing play, but but did it one time, and are either no longer being maintained by the community that plays that deck, or are being maintained but aren't really up to snuff necessarily. And then they have a Brewer's Corner, which is really cool.
Yeah, to see those are like the new commanders that people are testing out, or decks that are gaining traction but aren't quite part of the current meta.
Yeah, that might be making a comeback. One of
Yeah.
them being Tatiova Turns is on the Brewer's Corner now. Tatiova's been out for a while, but
And that's very similar to a high power casual deck that I play. And so I spent some time studying that deck list and studying those play lines to see what I wanted to include. And
Yeah.
I do include some of like the very landfall centric strategies, because that's what my casual deck is trying to do. It's trying to win through landfall triggers. And
yeah. One of my favorite parts about looking through those deck lists too is it's not necessarily instantly clear like what some of those combo lines are. And so there are primers that you can read on the deck list. Typically, they're telling you the different lines you can go through. And it's really cool because some of them are very layered combos where you need to tutor for this card and then sacrifice it and then get another card. Like there's a lot going on, and it turns out to be really fun.
Those primers, that is an art form to write those primers. Some of the primers that I've read on the cEDH decks are novels. They are so long and they're so in depth, and they are very helpful, but they can be quite the read. But yeah, it is definitely like an art form to write something so informational and so data heavy.
Yes.
It's interesting.
It is interesting because they're very long and also very concise pretty often. Like they're,
Yeah.
It's
a lot of content to cover.
Yeah,
and so like it is long, but it is also concise. Like
because it doesn't often. It usually doesn't only cover like here's the key combos in the deck. It'll also cover mulligans and like which hands you should keep and like against which tables and play patterns. And it's really cool because it helps you think critically about how you're supposed to play the deck versus just like having a keepable 7, which I had a hard time doing when I first was playing cEDH. And still doing Casual Commander way too much. I'm just like, I can keep this. This is keepable. When I probably should mulligan anyways. So, the next one is to find your play style. So, the previous two, you'll probably get some of this from playing Casual Commander. You probably have some, if you've been playing Casual Commander, you probably have some background on this.
Mm-hmm. Like there are decks that I love playing in Casual Commander strategy. There are also strategies I just don't really love, and I find myself either avoiding building those decks or taking those decks apart once I've built them. So just from playing Casual, I already know generally the kinds of archetypes that I like playing. Once again, they're not one-to-one in cEDH. It's if you really like playing what's an archetype like +1/+1 counters in Casual Commander. There's not like a +1/+1 counter cEDH deck. But you can get a sense for like what are the kinds of game actions you like taking, what are the kinds of ways that you like to win, and then you can find analogs for that in cEDH.
Yeah, any theme that you might find in a casual deck, you will likely not find in a cEDH deck as the theme necessarily, but it may have some of those elements that you enjoy. One example of this, I think, is that Kelson does like playing stacks, but he often doesn't play stacks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you like playing stacks.
I do like playing stacks, and I do not play stacks in Casual Commander.
Yeah, you don't like playing at Casual Commander, but in cEDH, like, it's fair game. Play some stacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I find myself a little deeper into cEDH, I will probably have a stacks deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the previous 2 steps of watching gameplay and looking at deck lists will also help you understand what you like to play. Another thing Kelson and I talked about is, for a casual night one time, we both built like Storm decks, and that felt like really bad to play in like a casual group.
Yeah.
But when you're playing cEDH, it's like no holds barred. Like no one's getting mad at you for like storming off. So it's like sick to be able to do that stuff in cEDH.
Yeah, it did feel really fun for me. It felt really bad for the rest of the table in a casual pod. And so that's not the kind of deck that I enjoy playing in casual pods, but definitely something I'm interested in
yeah,
cEDH.
plus you get to play free counter spells. Like that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, step 6. Pick your deck. Easy. Pick a deck. We're gonna give you a list of some you should choose from.
I was gonna say, Spencer, I don't think that's easy. Going into cEDH, not having played before, looking through the cEDH deck list database, there are a lot of commanders on there.
True.
It would be hard. I mean, maybe you have watched enough gameplay that you're just going to know what to pick, but you may pick something and find this is actually extremely complicated to play. It might be very difficult to pilot. So it is easy because we're going to give you some recommendations on good decks to start with if you're just jumping into cEDH. We will make it easy for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it can be intimidating.
I guess that's what I was saying is we're giving you 3 decks to choose from tonight.
Yeah.
So that should be easy. There are certainly other decks. Watching gameplay does help with that. I mean, and even that being said, the deck I've been playing most recently, and by most recently, I mean exclusively, is Tasigur, the Golden Fang.
Yeah.
And even I am looking at some of these other decks that I've seen play, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should switch to like another one that seems really fun.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, like I said, not very deep into cEDH, but I'm assuming that's okay. I will tell you, I have played a lot of Super Smash Bros. And in Super Smash Bros, it's generally frowned upon to switch mains. You're supposed to stick with a main and go really deep on that main. And I assume that that's probably generally how cEDH would work as well for any kind of competitive gaming. You kind of want to stick to a single strategy and become really expert in that strategy. But as you're starting out, you're probably going to try and go through a few decks first before you settle on what your main is, what commander you kind of want to stick with, or what strategy you want to stick with.
Can I give you a counter? Can I
Please
play the
please
opposite of that argument?
Yeah.
I actually think that it is more worthwhile when you're starting out to pick a commander and stick with that commander for the first little while of you playing. Just because each commander is going to have different play patterns and play styles and cards that are important to the win condition of that deck and how important it is to get your commander out early or whatever. And so I do think it's actually probably the other way around, right? Is that early on, you probably want to, at least this is how I did it, is I stuck with a commander for a little bit. I dove in really deep. We're going to talk about this a little later again, but I started going in. There's discords. In the cEDH decklist database, most commanders have a discord that are attached to them where people talk about this commander in cEDH and also in casual sometimes, but different card includes, different strategies. And I was in those discords like actively participating and commenting about, well, what about this card in Tasigur? I've been playing it since I feel very good. And I get feedback from people who've been playing it for significantly longer and say, yeah, I don't play that, or like, yeah, that's been doing really well for me, or whatever. And so I do think it's there is merit to sticking with a commander for the first little bit. In that you have less, like the breadth of knowledge you have to have is maybe a little bit less.
Nice. Good. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Everyone take that advice, please. Spencer's been through it. He's gonna know a lot more about that than I am.
Don't switch mains for the first little bit. keep playing Fox.
I like it. Yeah, you do play a lot of Fox, and
I do play a lot of Fox.
So hard to play against.
He's especially on. We're talking about Magic right now, but especially online.
Yeah,
it's really hard because it's the latency makes it tough.
Yeah.
Step 7: build your deck. In parentheses, we have here proxy.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy any of these cards.
Yeah, so what I hear frequently is how proxy-friendly cEDH is. Now, you have played quite a bit of cEDH at this point. Do you find that to be true? Is the community super proxy-friendly and supportive of proxies?
Yes. I know there may be some tournaments, and especially tournaments at LGSs, where they say, like, you're allowed this many proxies, or your proxies have to be... Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Yeah, that seems weirder than just saying no proxies. If you're like X number of proxies, it's like, well, you've already opened the door to proxies. Why are you just like making the door narrow?
Yeah, it is a little gatekeepy to be like, we only have 10 proxies or whatever.
I guess they want to sell singles, so.
It probably is a marketing thing more than anything. But generally speaking, yeah, very, very proxy friendly. As I've joined games, especially when I was first playing, I said, hey, a lot of these are proxies, just so like you're aware. And they're like, are they legible? And it's like, yeah, okay, great. Like that's all people care about. There was a little bit where I had like I mean, I'll show you. Let me get a proxy. These are my proxies. This is a scarab god.
Yep.
It is a blank piece of paper. There was a while where I had a paper like this that said Ledger Shredder in pen.
Nice.
And Grim Monolith in pen. And then I just like put it in my deck list. Yeah, and people were like, okay, cool. What's that? A Grim Monolith? Sick. Like,
honestly, with some people's webcams, that's probably more legible than the actual cards.
Right, exactly. You just say Grim Monolith very clearly into your microphone as you play it, and people are like, "Yeah, cool, that counts."
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
one of the common sayings inside of cEDH is that you're trying to play against the player and not their wallet, which I think is really cool.
I
You're
like
just
that.
Everyone's just trying to play cEDH or Commander powered up as high as it can go, and they're trying to play their deck, and they don't want you to be hamstrung by the fact that you can't afford, an $800 Mox Diamond.
Yeah. That's cool. I respect that a lot. I think that's such a cool stance from that community. That makes it so accessible. It makes it easy for players to jump in.
Yeah. And then last step here, play your deck. Where can you play? On the cEDH Discord. That is something they mentioned in brief in this episode. So again, please go check out Play to Win's episode. They go over this significantly more in depth. We are just giving a quick little synopsis of it here. But to play your deck, the cEDH Discord, we'll link it in the description. You can go. There's a looking for game channel. You type in the looking for game command, and then it notifies you when you're in a game, and you join Spell Table.
Cool.
So you just need a camera that looks at your desk, and a microphone, and a computer that can connect to a camera that looks at your desk, and a cEDH deck.
Yeah.
And you're good to go.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a fancy setup. I've lurked on some Spell Table games, and you see a wide range of setups there on Spell Table.
Yep, absolutely. So one thing that maybe is courteous is when you first start playing is to let people know, hey, I'm like relatively new, so please forgive me if I make any faux pas. Let me know. Some people got pretty upset with me a couple times because I didn't tutor for the correct thing when I told them I was new, so I quickly stopped telling people that as soon as I was pretty aware of the etiquette, because people are generally very, very nice, but you run into one or two people that are less kind to newer players.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's cool. Here's a question. When you're playing on Spell Table, if you want to play a deck, but maybe you're not even ready to proxy it, maybe you're not to the point where you're ready to even proxy it. For cEDH games, do you see people playing on Moxfield on Spell Table?
No, not very much.
So it's primarily paper.
Primarily paper over Spell Table. People do play over Cockatrice. So they do have two different groups. There's looking for game hyphen webcam, and you're looking for a Spell Table webcam game.
Gotcha.
Or you're looking for game Cockatrice.
Cool.
We are not the best people to give you information about Cockatrice. I played on Cockatrice, I think, twice.
Yeah, I've only played a couple times as well.
And it's relatively complex.
To like set up and get going and figure out,
Yeah, it's
no
not
MTG Arena.
Yeah, it's not the easiest interface, but people do play there. So if you don't have a webcam, looking to figuring out Cockatrice, there's plenty of YouTube videos to help get you going, guides to help you get you going on Cockatrice, and then you can play in those games if you don't have the budget to proxy a deck from your local Kinko's.
Yep. I referenced Kinko's a couple of days ago, and luckily everyone in the room knew what I was talking about. Is Kinko's still around? Are there still Kinko's? Or did FedEx buy them all?
They probably don't exist anymore. I think it's
but that's exactly what I referenced when I was talking about a print shop.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say FedEx, but I was like, they ship stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so we've already mentioned where you can find some of the cEDH content to watch, the Discords that you should be joining. Let's jump into some of the cEDH new player friendly commanders. What are some of the commanders that you would recommend and that the community recommends for new players to start playing?
Yeah, let me preface this by saying these aren't necessarily my recommendations. These are recommendations from the cEDH Discord through us. We're going to link you to the cEDH Discord. They have a new player's guide on the Discord channel that talks about cEDH. I think it's called like cEDH First Steps, if I remember correctly. We will link to it or give you a way to get there. As a part of that, they have decks that you should try out as new players. Specifically, they also mention strategies you should avoid. So the idea is, we're going to list some specific ones here. They have a longer list. I picked 3 of them. I'm so sorry about this cough. This is really
Everyone pray for
rhythm.
Spencer. He may not make it to next week.
Oh my goodness.
We may have a different co-host next
Yeah,
week.
yeah, exactly.
On the podcast.
Because I'm driving Kelton crazy. He's going to drive to my house. But they generally recommend that you play commanders that have a relatively linear strategy to them. So you're trying to get to your win condition, win the game, straight up linear. Something they don't recommend, I'm going to give an example of each. Something they don't recommend is playing stacks when you're first getting a commander. Stacks can be incredibly difficult to pilot because you are slowing down the rest of the table and potentially keeping them from interacting at key moments to help them win the game. So knowing when to play your stack pieces, when to remove your own stacks pieces, and when to let people through and play around those windows of opportunity for you to win and also help other people stop wins is really difficult.
Interesting.
And requires a lot of experience of having played Commander and knowing what other decks are trying to do.
It's kind of like you're playing not only your own deck, but you're playing every other player's deck at the table as well.
Yeah, and I would say like that's generally what is happening in cEDH. A lot of the time is you're like trying to you need to know at least what these other decks are trying to do and how they're trying to win, and you can play around that a little better. I noticed I got significantly better as I started recognizing like key pieces for people's win conditions, and also actively voicing those to the table and saying that's a win condition on their board or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, playing stacks is just significantly harder to pilot without a depth of experience of knowing, how to play stacks in the cEDH metagame.
Yeah.
So some of these commanders are going to be a little more linear. And the first one is, again, these are recommendations from them, which made me really happy because this is the one I chose to build, is Tasigur the Golden Fang.
That's cool.
Tasigur is really cool. I'm going to give you a little brief synopsis of it. We're going to give a brief synopsis of each of these. It generally leverages the fact that you can cheat Tasigur out on his mana cost using his delve ability. Guys, this is bad. You can cheat your commander out using his delve ability. So you need to get fetch lands, other things in your graveyard, a Jeweled Lotus, a Lotus Petal, and you can cast Tasigur very quickly. And then you can use cards like Neoform or Eldritch Evolution or Birthing Pod. Those are kind of the only three that you're going to be playing in the deck of pod effects to sacrifice Tasigur, who you've cheated out for significantly cheaper, to go and get one of your key 7 drops to give you advantage or win you the game.
Yeah, I've played against this deck now in several iterations of it and different power levels of it that you've built, and it's a cool strategy. The pod strategy is very cool. Pod references the card Birthing Pod, where you're sacrificing a creature to go get another creature, and so there's a lot of those kinds of effects in Tasigur to get these big threats out to help you win the game. And one of the win cons that you win the game is you just get to like basically cast your entire library, correct?
Yeah, it's really cool. So Tasigur has a second ability. Guys, we're going to scrap this episode and record again next week. No, I'm just kidding.
You scared me. I mean, we can if you're like dying here.
No, I'm okay. I just feel so bad.
People have already suffered through 20 minutes of this.
I know, exactly. You see me sipping this water trying to get this over with. I maybe going to talk a little bit less, and maybe you can talk about some of these if that's okay.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to.
But Tasigur costs 6 mana, which is really cool because you can, with these pot effects, go get a creature with 1 mana value greater. And so you get either some value piece, like a Toxtril the Corrosive, which is very good, for very cheap because you've cast Tasigur often for 1 mana and then cast Neoform for 2. And you get to search your deck for your 7-drop. That's really sweet. Or through Hullbreaker Horror, and you generate infinite mana by casting your mana rocks that are mana positive to generate infinite mana and bounce each other with Hullbreaker Horror. I'm not going to explain any of these combos in depth because you can get them online. But then Tasigur has a second ability that lets you use your infinite mana, if you have colored mana, to put the top 2 cards of your library in your graveyard, and then the opponent chooses a non-land to put it in your hand. So you get
So eventually you go through your whole deck.
You get your
and it
entire
all
deck
goes into
except for your
hand.
lands into your hand.
That's cool.
You've not drawn any of it because it's not draw, it's mill and then put into your hand.
And then you still have infinite mana that you can then cast all the spells with.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then
That's
you usually
really
have stuff that lets you like shuffle your library back in if you need to, and like to keep you from being killed by someone who like, I don't know, just hits you with I lost one time because I played Thassa's Demonic and someone used Kenrith's draw card ability on me with an empty library, and that felt kind of bad. So
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'll read the next two, and then I'll just pause after each one, and you can tell me if there's any sweet deck tech or combos that you want to highlight with these. The second one is Najeela the Blade Blossom. So the idea here is to just play the commander out as early as possible. Start getting warriors. She generates warriors, so you're trying to get as many warriors as possible to then find a way to use them to then generate infinite mana, and which can then feed into her other ability to help you win the game. And but though it sounds like often enough, just getting enough warriors is also just going to win you the game.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I was just thinking, should we read these? Should we read these cards, or are we gonna just show them on the?
Yeah, no. Well, we'll definitely show them on the video, but I'll go ahead and read Najeela really quick. So Najeela the Blade Blossom is 2 in a red for a 3/2 human warrior. Whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking. Then you can pay Wooburg, so white, blue, black, red, green, to untap all attacking creatures. They gain trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Activate this ability only during combat. So I guess that's the other strength of this particular commander, is that it allows you to play all 5 colors.
Yep.
Which is probably pretty good in cEDH.
You play all 5 colors. You have typically something that helps you get value off of untapping your creatures. You get infinite mana, you get infinite combats, you get infinite warriors because your warriors keep attacking. Notably, this is the best deck to take advantage of Jeweled Lotus because it is all 5 colors, but you can cast it with a single Jeweled Lotus, which is really good.
That's crazy. That's cool. The next one, I guess the final one, is Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. This is green, blue for a 2/2 human druid. Whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. And then it has the activated ability 5 green, blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So the strategy here is that you want to get a big burst of mana really early on using your permanents, your non-land permanents that generate mana, and then find pieces to then generate infinite mana, which you can then dump into Kinnan's ability to pull out a bunch of creatures, find a combo, or even just like a really big X spell.
Yeah, notably Kinnan is like kind of a fun deck because it plays a lot of big creatures that you're trying to cheat out with Kinnan's ability. Notably, Kinnan though does 2 things. It gives you like a ton of mana advantage because you are playing a bunch of non-land sources of mana in cEDH especially, and he's a mana sink in the command zone.
Yeah.
Albeit 7 mana, but that's not very hard when you have a Talisman and a Soul Ring, for example, that tap for a total of 5 mana now. Like that's...
So this is actually really interesting. I noticed reading this card that all 3 of these recommendations have an activated ability on them.
Yeah, these are examples of commanders that have that are part of the winning combo. One of the most popular decks right now is Tymna Kraum. It's called Blue Farm. Tymna is, I'll read Tymna really quick. Pardon the eye roll. I'm just coughing up a story.
Well, I can also read Tymna.
I'll read Tymna. You can read Kraum.
Deal.
Actually, maybe you read Tymna. I'll read Kraum. I think Kraum's shorter.
Okay, I already pulled up Kraum. Okay,
switch.
Tymna the Weaver is 1 white, black for a 2/2 human cleric with lifelink. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, you draw X cards. So you attack everybody, pay 3 life, draw 3 cards every turn.
Yep, and then Kraum is 3 blue, red, flying and haste, 4/4. Whenever an opponent casts his or her second spell each turn, draw a card. They both have partner, so you can play them as partners together. You get all the colors except green, which is currently considered potentially the worst color in cEDH unless you're playing Kinnan, who is currently considered kind of the boogeyman of cEDH.
Yeah.
But these are just 2 card advantages in the command zone. So
Yeah,
generally you're playing
like
yeah.
3 cards on your turn, 3 extra cards on your turn at least, and then you're drawing an extra card on every opponent's turn.
Yeah,
as
up to
well.
3 cards, and 3 additional cards a turn cycle. So like
Yeah.
7 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a reason it's played a ton. Quite good card advantage, but no combos. So you have to find your combos. Where some of these, actually give you the combos. And again, an example of why Kinnan is so good because it gives you the outlet for the infinite mana in the command zone, but also gives you some additional advantage to be able to like generate that mana, which is good.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we hope that maybe one of these suggestions has sparked your interest. And if you are looking to get into cEDH, then you can pick one of these decks or head over to the cEDH Discord and check out their new player guide. Check out the other recommendations that they have there. Go watch some gameplay. Go watch some Play to Win. They have some really fun games. We're hoping to get gameplay started on this channel as well. Probably with more casual Commander, but we'll probably throw some cEDH in there as well. So stay tuned. Remember, if you want to learn more about high power casual, then and getting into that a little bit more, check out our last episode. You can find it on our channel. So thank you all for listening. Everyone pray for Spencer that this cough is going to be resolved and we'll still have him as a host next week. Thank you all for listening. We really have felt your support and we love all the interaction that we're getting on these videos. So keep watching. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. It really helps us out and keeps you tuned into new content. So you can join us for a new episode next week. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify. We'll get our podcast on the rest of the podcast apps as well. And you can find us at thecommanderpod.com. You can find us there. You can reach out to us. And we are getting our decks uploaded onto Moxfield as well. And we'll get those linked on the website. You can find them there as well. So until next time, remember to always play the